just want to briefly comment on this, because there are far more important things I think this committee should be discussing with the Secretary of State and his team. But Secretary of State, I agree with your opening remarks where you said this is not a priority for people in Scotland just now, and that's clear in opinion poll after opinion poll. But where people are concerned is the Scottish Government wasting money. Now, I could give you many, many examples of that, but particularly on this debate, we know how expensive this has been, this court case, for the Scottish Government. Do we know yet how much the UK Government have spent in the Supreme Court defending their position in a court case where they were brought into the courtroom by the First Minister? And secondly, on the civil service...
Was the question, do we know how much the UK Government spent?
The UK Government have spent in total on the case...
I do know.
Defending the argument after the First Minister took Scotland's two governments into the courtroom. And secondly, we know approximately £1.5 million a year is being spent by the Scottish Government on civil servants working on their plans to break Scotland away from the rest of the United Kingdom. Do you believe that's an appropriate use of taxpayers' money and civil service time by the Scottish Government?
So, to answer your first question, the sum from memory is £71,800 that we've spent so far. I'm fairly confident that's the figure, but it's in that zone that we've spent so far on the Supreme Court case. Regarding the civil service in Scotland, your second question, the permanent secretary to the Scottish Government stays in close contact with Simon Case, Sue Gray, the Proprietary and Ethics team in the Cabinet Office, on the role of the civil service in Scotland and what the parameters are that they can operate under. And that has been the case, certainly been the case since 2014, when I think there was a review following the referendum of the role of the civil service in Scotland. However, what I would say to you is that following this judgment, they're working again on what that means for the role of the civil service in Scotland. So we'll have to see where that takes us. But they are, as I say, following this judgment, those people, the Cabinet Office, the civil service, led by the head of the Cabinet Secretary, are working again on what this judgment means for the future role of the civil service in Scotland.
So I think that's a crucial point.
It is.
Because up until Wednesday, we've seen all the announcements by the First Minister on an independence referendum. Next year, she wanted to hold it in less than 12 months, taking place in Butte House. We know the Scottish Government stamped their logo on the documents that had been issued. We'd had government ministers presenting these again at Butte House. However, it seems clear, and it is clear from the Supreme Court ruling, that this is now a party political issue, not a government issue. And I think people in Scotland would be rightly concerned that there continues to be hundreds of thousands of pounds, indeed millions of pounds annually spent by civil servants at the direction of the First Minister and the Scottish Government on what is now a party election issue, because the First Minister wants to make this a single issue election at the next general election, and therefore I think this committee chair would be very interested to know how those discussions about the change in the last week materialise and develop over the coming days, weeks and months.
Well, I appreciate that, and you're right to point out, I mean, the First Minister, to her credit, did go to a hotel in Edinburgh to make the announcement that she wanted to make the general election a de facto referendum. So she acknowledged that this was a political statement in effect, because it would have been wrong to, I think, probably to have done it from Butte House or from Holyrood, because it is very much moving the argument going forwards onto a political basis, where having the Supreme Court's judgment having been so unequivocal and so clear about the causes and effects of engaging in something that's reserved. And I highlight this, it would be no different if the Scottish Government were taking the same approach and using civil servants towards our nuclear deterrent in Faslane. The analogies are very similar, and it's all the same part of the Scotland Act, which is Schedule 5, I think, of the Scotland Act. So yes, it is a very serious issue that needs to be seriously looked at.